Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of your sources and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight, just for you. Today, we're plunging into a question that seems simple on the surface, but has layers of fascinating complexity. Is psychology really a science? You know the drill. You might have heard common ideas about psychology. Maybe it's just common sense, or, psychologists are simply mind readers, or it's only for crazy people. For anyone familiar with the field, these are clearly myths. But why do they persist? Our deep dive today is going to demonstrate why they're so fundamentally wrong by revealing the true scientific rigor behind psychology.
They absolutely do persist, yeah. And they often overshadow the systematic, evidence-based pursuit of understanding the human mind. You're right, they're not just trivial misunderstandings.
Exactly. And that's precisely the core of today's deep dive. Our mission is to unpack what science truly means, trace psychology's remarkable journey, from philosophy to laboratory, explore its powerful and diverse research methods, acknowledge the unique challenges it faces, and highlight the surprising importance of rationality in its practical application. By the end, you'll have a solid understanding and hopefully some truly surprising insights into what makes psychology tick. So let's jump in. To truly answer if psychology is a science, we first need to define our measuring stick. What exactly does science mean? Beyond the dictionary definition of knowledge from its Latin root, scientia, it's more than just knowing things, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Science, at its heart, is the systematic pursuit and application of knowledge about the natural and social world, always grounded in observable evidence and a rigorous methodology. It's not about intuition or opinion. It's about a structured way of discovering and verifying facts.
Right. And to really classify something as a scientific discipline, it needs to hit some key markers. We've identified 6 core pillars of scientific inquiry.
Exactly. The first, and perhaps most fundamental, is empirical evidence. This means knowledge acquired through direct observation or experiments. Crucially, stuff that must be verifiable by others. The key insight here, especially for psychology, is that observing something as elusive as a thought or an emotion, well, it requires incredibly clever and rigorous methods. It's far from mere common sense observation.
Okay, verifiable evidence. Building on that foundation, we then need to consider objectivity. That sounds incredibly challenging when studying human beings, doesn't it? How do psychologists even try to achieve that, given our inherent biases as researchers?
It is a profound challenge, yeah. Objectivity is the ability to see and accept facts as they are, free from biases, prejudices, personal beliefs, or wishes. Psychologists develop highly structured experiments. They use standardized measures, employ statistical analysis, all to minimize subjective interpretation. It's about letting the data speak for itself, even if it tells you something unexpected.
Letting the data speak. I like that. And it's not enough just to observe, is it? Science truly shines when it can identify scientific causality.
That's right. This is where science aims to find cause-effect relationships. Researchers meticulously control other influences, extraneous variables, to isolate the impact of an independent variable, the cause, on a dependent variable, the effect. The fascinating part is trying to understand why things happen, not just that they happen. And this is incredibly complex with human behavior, where so many factors are always at play.
Yeah, I can imagine. Which leads us to the idea of systematic exploration. So this isn't just random guesswork then?
Far from it. Science isn't random. It follows a clear sequential procedure. Identifying a problem, formulating a testable hypothesis, meticulously collecting and analyzing data, and then moving towards broader generalizations and predictions. It's a disciplined, step-by-step process designed to minimize error.
Okay. The next pillar, replication, feels incredibly important for building trust in findings.
It absolutely is. Crucial. Replication means the reproducibility of scientific knowledge. If another researcher can run your experiment under the same conditions, anywhere, anytime, and get similar results, that assures reliability. It's essential for establishing robust scientific theories. If a finding can't be replicated, well, it raises serious questions about its validity.
Makes sense. Finally, we have predictability.
Right. Predictability isn't just about describing what happens. It's about explaining why it happens and then using that understanding to accurately predict what might happen next. Now, while psychology clearly fulfills many of these conditions, you have to remember human behavior's inherent complexity. It means it's not always as exact or universally predictable as, say, physics or chemistry. It's a social science, which comes with its own unique set of fascinating challenges and, well, nuances.
That distinction is key. And to truly understand how psychology measures up against these pillars, we need to go back in time a bit. Psychology actually started its life as a branch of philosophy, right? Dating way back.
All the way back to the ancient Greeks, yeah. And it stayed intertwined with philosophical inquiry until well into the 1870s. It was a long journey from speculation to the lab.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. What exactly was it about Wilhelm Wundt's lab in Leipzig, Germany in 1879? What made that the moment? The shift from philosophy to science. What did he do differently?
That laboratory, the world's first dedicated psychology lab, was just monumental, a turning point. Wundt basically brought the systematic, empirical methods of natural science to study mental processes. He focused on measurable, observable aspects of consciousness, things like reaction time, sensations. He tried to break them down into basic elements. That led to the school of structuralism. It was an early attempt, you could say, to apply a kind of scientific, almost chemical analysis to the mind, using systematic introspection as a core method. Flawed, maybe, but it laid the groundwork.
Introspection, like looking inward systematically. Okay, so from breaking down the mind's structure, we then move to understanding its purpose with functionalism. William James, right? The father of American psychology.
That's him. Functionalism shifted the focus from the structure of consciousness to its function. How does consciousness help us adapt, survive in the world? It was more about the why and how of mental processes, emphasizing the practical purpose of our thoughts and behaviors. Very American, that pragmatic approach entering the field.
Pragmatic, yeah. And of course, a name almost everyone knows, Sigmund Freud, with psychoanalysis. What made that such a revolutionary idea at the time, even if its methods were quite different from Wundt's experimental approach?
Freud's theory, popping up in the early 1890s, was revolutionary because it gave huge importance to the unconscious mind and to early childhood experiences. It proposed that so much of our behavior is driven by hidden, often unresolved conflicts. His clinical methods weren't empirical like Wundt's, sure, but his ideas fundamentally changed how we thought about mental life. It opened up a deeper, albeit different, kind of exploration of the psyche.
Okay, the unconscious. Then, early 20th century, we saw a big push for more observable science with behaviorism. John B. Watson.
Behaviorism was a direct, almost aggressive reaction against the subjectivity of introspection and the, unobservable nature of the unconscious. Watson and others basically declared, if we can't see it, we can't study it scientifically. So they focused purely on observable behaviors and how they relate to environmental stimuli. It definitely made psychology seem more scientific by focusing only on what could be objectively seen and measured. Rigorous maybe, but some would say a bit narrow.
Right, observable behavior only. But then, by the mid-20th century, things shifted again with humanistic psychology. Figures like Carl Rogers.
Humanistic psychology, emerging in the second half of the 20th century, offered a really profound contrast to those deterministic views of psychoanalysis and behaviorism. It stressed human potential, free will, self-determination, self-actualization. It was kind of a reaction to what some saw as, dehumanizing aspects of the other approaches. It emphasized the unique, positive sides of human experience.
A more positive, empowering view. And finally, a really powerful perspective that's still huge today, cognitivism. Ulrich Neisser, 1950s-60s.
Cognitivism marked a pivotal return to studying internal mental processes, but this time with new scientific rigor. Researchers started looking seriously at higher cognitive processes: memory, decision-making, problem-solving, intelligence, language. The real breakthrough here was bringing in objective tools like MRI and PET scans later on. These allowed psychologists to actually visualize brain activity linked to these mental processes. That really helped cement psychology's scientific standing, connecting the mind to observable brain function.
Wow. That's a truly fascinating evolution. You can really see how psychologists kept refining their approaches, trying to study the mind and behavior more scientifically over time. So with that historical context, how do psychologists actually do this science today? What are the essential tools in their toolkit? Let's get practical.
That's a critical question, yeah. They use a diverse set of research methods, and the key is that each one is chosen carefully to answer specific kinds of questions about human behavior and mental processes.
Okay, let's start with maybe the most powerful one for establishing cause and effect. The experimental method.
Right. The experimental method is often seen as the gold standard for nailing down cause-effect relationships. It involves a very systematic series of steps. You identify a problem, develop a testable hypothesis, design an experiment to meticulously control variables, collect data, analyze it, and then draw conclusions. So, for example, if you want to study the effect of music on blood pressure, music would be your independent variable, the cause you manipulate. Blood pressure is the dependent variable, the effect you measure. And you'd carefully control for other things like age or gender that might interfere.
Controlling variables. Okay.
Its strength is definitely its objectivity and the controlled conditions. But, like we touched on, ethical constraints are a big limitation. You can't ethically study certain human behaviors, like, say, the long-term effects of severe sleep deprivation, by actually depriving people for weeks.
Right, that delicate balance again. Knowing what you could study versus what you should. So when experiments aren't feasible, or maybe you need insights from a really large group, what's another tool?
That's where the survey method comes in really handy. It's used for collecting data from a predefined group, a sample, using tools like questionnaires, checklists, rating scales, or even interviews. It's incredibly efficient for gathering broad insights pretty quickly. You see it used a lot by social, educational, and industrial psychologists exploring things like job satisfaction, opinions on social issues, or maybe habits like online gaming addiction.
I can see how that gives you a wide snapshot. What about just watching people?
Yeah.
Seeing what happens naturally.
That's the observation method. It's invaluable in situations where experiments aren't feasible or ethical. It basically involves observing behavior, either in natural settings, like watching kids interact on a playground totally undisturbed, or sometimes in more controlled laboratory environments. Child psychologists, clinical psychologists, social psychologists, they use it extensively. Think about studying, say, aggressive tendencies in teenagers in their actual school environment, or noting body language during a tense competition.
Observing in the wild, so to speak. And for a really, really deep dive into one person, or maybe a very specific, unique situation.
Then you'd likely turn to the case study method. This is more of a qualitative method. It provides an incredibly in-depth look at an individual, sometimes a small group, or a specific event. Clinical psychologists use it a lot, and historically. Figures like Sigmund Freud and Jean Piaget were famous for their extensive use of case studies. The real power here is the richness of the descriptive information you get. It often generates compelling hypotheses for later, more systematic research.
You mentioned you had a great historical example for us, the case of Anna O.
Yes, Anne O. Her real name was Bertha Pappenheim. She suffered from various really puzzling symptoms, both physical and psychological. For instance, for several weeks, she found herself completely unable to drink any fluids, even though she was terribly thirsty. Under hypnosis, Josef Breuer, working with Freud, helped her recall a repressed memory. Seeing her English lady companion's little dog drinking water from a glass, something that disgusted her at the time, but she felt she couldn't comment on. As soon as she recalled this event and expressed the associated disgust and anger, she immediately asked for water, drank a whole glass, and that specific symptom vanished. It was a landmark case.
Wow.
It played a truly remarkable role in the early development of psychoanalysis, suggesting how complex internal psychological states could manifest physically. It highlights the unique power, but also maybe the interpretive challenges of these deep individual studies.
That's a vivid example of psychology's investigative power, for sure. Okay, one more method. How do psychologists figure out if things are related, even if one doesn't directly cause the other?
That's where correlation studies come in. These studies use statistical tools to measure the relationship between two or more variables. It's expressed by something called a correlation coefficient. This coefficient is a number, usually between -1.0 and +1.00, and it tells us two things: the direction of the relationship and its strength.
Okay, so what are the types?
There are three basic types. First, positive correlation. This means both variables tend to increase or decrease together. Like, the more you rehearse something, generally, the better your recall score. Both go up. Second, negative correlation. Here, as one variable increases, the other tends to decrease. For example, typically, the more someone exercises, the lower their level of body fat might be. One goes up, the other goes down. And third, zero correlation. This just means there's no significant relationship between the variables. Changes in one don't reliably predict changes in the other. Think height and intelligence generally. No connection there.
Got it. Positive, negative, zero.
But, and this is really critical, correlation does not imply causation. Just because two things are related statistically doesn't mean one causes the other. There could be a third factor involved, or the relationship could be coincidental. Critical thinking about these relationships is absolutely key.
Correlation isn't causation. Heard that one before, and it seems super important here. So, okay, if psychology uses all these rigorous scientific methods, experiments, surveys, observation, case studies, correlations, why are there still controversies? Why do some people still question if it's a real science? It sounds pretty robust.
It's a fair question. It's not always easy, mainly because studying something as complex and frankly slippery as the human mind comes with unique challenges that you don't find in, say, chemistry. One major critique comes from the philosopher of science, Thomas Kuhn. He suggested psychology might still be in what he called a pre-paradigmatic state.
Pre-paradigmatic, what does that mean?
It means, unlike older natural sciences like physics or chemistry, psychology hasn't yet produced a single, universally agreed-upon core body of knowledge or theoretical framework. There isn't one grand theory, like relativity in physics, that everyone signs up to. There are still fundamental disagreements about core principles and methods. This makes it harder to establish those universal laws you see in other sciences. It's a science still debating its own foundations in some ways.
Okay. A science still defining its unified core. That sounds like a fundamental challenge.
It absolutely can be. Then there are persistent issues with objectivity and validity. We talked about objectivity being a goal, but some areas, like studying personality or complex emotions, often rely on softer methods like surveys or questionnaires where self-reporting introduces subjectivity. And historical methods like introspection or even some aspects of psychoanalysis are inherently subjective. So psychology sometimes faces unique hurdles in achieving that pure, detached objectivity you might see in physics.
And just the human element itself, we're all so different. That must make prediction really hard.
You're absolutely right. Predictability and replicability challenges are significant. Human behavior is incredibly dynamic, complex, context-dependent. People react differently. This means predicting exactly how someone will behave is difficult. Test results can be more varied, harder to control perfectly, and sometimes findings are tougher to replicate consistently across different groups or situations compared to, say, chemical reactions.
Yeah, people aren't chemicals in a test tube.
Exactly. And there's also the objectifying humans critique. This comes often from existential or humanistic psychologists. They raise an ethical concern. Does subjecting human behavior to rigorous experimentation risk dehumanizing individuals, treating them merely as objects of study rather than complex, unique beings with agency? It's this constant internal tension, this debate within psychology itself, about how to balance that scientific rigor with genuine respect for human dignity and the richness of individual experience.
It's clear these challenges really highlight the unique complexities involved. Studying the human mind is just inherently more intricate than studying particles or compounds. But psychology isn't just about understanding the mind in an abstract scientific way, is it? It's also fundamentally about improving life. There's a practical side.
That's the wonderful synergy, yes. While psychology seeks these general principles or laws of behavior, it simultaneously has to respect human complexity and uniqueness. And this knowledge isn't just for academics, it's profoundly practical, especially when we talk about rationality. Stanovich and his colleagues defined it quite well as, essentially, adaptive reasoning, good judgment, and good decision-making.
Adaptive reasoning.
Yeah, okay.
And one of the leading figures in applying this was Dr. Albert Ellis, right? With rational emotive behavioral therapy. He boiled down psychological health into that powerful framework, be rational.
The real nugget here seems to be that true rationality isn't just about cold logic, but about this holistic balance, self-awareness, social responsibility, flexible thinking, facing life's messiness. Exactly. Ellis's framework isn't just about avoiding irrational thoughts. It's really a whole philosophy for living more effectively and happily. It includes principles like balancing self-interest and others' interests, estimating time and effort realistically, respecting oneself and others, affiliating with others, all the way through to living life fully. Things like tolerance for yourself and others, accepting you can be wrong, flexibility in your thinking, self-acceptance unconditionally, taking responsibility for your own thoughts and feelings.
That's quite a list. Be rational. B-E-R-A-T-I-O-N-A-L. So it covers self-interest, social interest, self-direction, tolerance, flexibility, self-acceptance.
And self-responsibility, yes. It's about integrating personal well-being with social well-being, optimizing your potential, navigating challenges, accepting limitations, but also working to overcome them. It's comprehensive.
These aren't just academic concepts then. They feel like really tangible tools offered by cytology that you can actually use day to day. But let's quickly recap where we've landed. We've seen pretty clearly that psychology is indeed a science. It's built on empirical evidence, uses systematic methods, and has this rich history of evolving thought and powerful research tools. But we've also acknowledged the unique and, frankly, fascinating challenges that come with studying something as complex, as dynamic as the human mind.
And despite those complexities and ongoing debates, psychology provides invaluable insights. From understanding the intricate workings of our minds, why we think, feel, and behave as we do, to very practical applications, like fostering rationality and improving well-being, it really does help us navigate and enhance our lives. So here's a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. Reflect on that Be Rational framework we just touched upon from Dr. Ellis. Which of those characteristics, like tolerance, flexibility, self-acceptance, balancing self and others, do you feel you embody most strongly in your own life right now? And, maybe more interestingly, which one might be an area for your own personal deep dive, a place for growth? How might consciously trying to apply just one of those principles change a common challenge or interaction you face in your day-to-day life? Something to mull over.